I never imagined I would be an abandoned girl until I discovered I was the daughter of a powerful werewolf family. Chapter 6, You Like It Rough. I'm not sure if you're the biggest, a cup or the smallest B-cup, Marilyn said, holding up to brass that was supposed to be for me. I was so embarrassed. I just stared at the floor and shrugged my shoulders as Marilyn waved brass and underwear around, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. What do you think? Marilyn asked, turning to me while holding up the two brass. I shrugged my shoulders, looking at the black one and the tan one that didn't seem to be any bigger nor smaller from the first. Well, which one fit better? I crossed my arms over my small chest. I was born with broad shoulders and tiny boobs. It's unfair. They both fit the same, I mumbled. Just because Kieran basically promised in the card that Marilyn was sentenced to being my BFF. I was still extremely weary of her. She may have helped me with the whole Bolton incident, but she was the one to attack me first. She sighed loudly, and after she thought for a moment, she set the tan one down. Looks like you haven't grown since the 5th grade. So I'm just going to assume you aren't going to grow into a bee, she said, picking up more brass that I'm guessing were a cups like the one she kept. They could grow, I said, slightly angered by what she had said. Marilyn turned to look at me. She must have sensed my uneasiness, allowing her eyes to scan me up and down. I'm just stating the facts. I promised Kieran I would buy you clothes that would fit. To my authentic 𝐊𝐤𝐬𝐩𝐿 𝐊𝐤𝐬𝐻𝐿, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐤𝐧𝐑𝐚 enthusiasm. Since you were so weird about him coming in here with us, Marilyn stated, picking up one more bra and placed it in her left hand that already held 10 pairs of strange, sexual-looking underwear, and for other brass, including to sports brass. It would have been weird, I muttered, looking away from her. I don't see why. It's not like he won't be seeing you without clothes soon, she said, as if she were talking about lunch. I gaped at her. She gave me a smile and headed off to the cash register. I watched as her perfect body walked away with the perfect amount of sway. I frowned and tried turning the top of my body to look at my butt. Was it perfectly rounded like hers? Did I even have a butt? I sighed and walked after her. The woman at the register rang up the clothes for us. The total was a lot more than I had expected. Marilyn took out her wallet and glared at the inside of it. Shit, she muttered as she grabbed a card. Just put it on this, she stated as she mumbled something to herself about how her weekly pay was real and due to some stupid bond. I didn't think much of it because I didn't even know if I had heard her correctly. The woman scanned a card and we left the store. Well, it wasn't actually a store. It was a little shop at a mall. I thought we were going to the town that I had tried to get a job in just days ago. But Marilyn had informed me that we weren't even in the same town. We were actually 2 towns over from that one, and we're now in Nick's town. I'm surprised I haven't heard Kieran complain about not sleeping in his bed yet, Marilyn joked as we walked down to the food court to meet the boys. I looked over to Marilyn with questioning eyes. What do you mean? You've been sleeping in his bed, she said, popping her gum. He's usually a grumpy asshole if he doesn't sleep in his bed. He slept on the couch one time and Bolton ended up being thrown against a tree for flicking his ear, Marilyn said, chuckling slightly as she recalled the memory. And he was okay? I asked, mortified that Kieran would even be able to do that. Wait, he threw him into a tree. I practically screamed. Hey, keep your voice down, Marilyn snapped. But yeah. Whereas basically have super strength and healing abilities that aren't really describable by just normal people. Bolton was perfectly fine like 5 after it happened, she said as we rounded a corner. Oh, that makes sense, I said to myself, thinking of all the times that I'd managed to hurt myself only to have it heal in a matter of minutes. That was just another factor to the lunatic thing. I was startled by the sudden growl that rang through my head. A viscous snarl followed it. I shook my head, ignoring my wolf. Everything seemed to bother her. Don't worry. To my authentic 𝐊𝐤𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐿 𝐊𝐤𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐿, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Kieran would never let Bolton or anyone for that matter lay a hand on you. Trust me. I know. Her eyes seemed to grow distant while she thought about something. Her left hand came up to hold her right wrist as she rolled her right hand around. She must have realized I was watching her because she stopped and smiled down at me. I'm surprised he hasn't marked you. Yet marked me, I said, and instantly thought of Kieran holding a hot iron against my butt. I'm pretty sure my face paled. It's the way the males of our kind claim their mates, and it's a status symbol for the person wearing it. For instance, since Kieran would be giving you the mark of an alpha, you'd give off a radiance of power. It's part of being accepted as his alpha female. I pursed my lips as I thought about what she had said. Meanwhile, the voice in my head repeatedly snarled, the noise growing louder by the minute. I didn't know why she'd be so angry. Maybe she didn't like Kieran anymore, or maybe she didn't like Marilyn. Were you and Kieran ever? I dragged out, not wanting to just blurt out, by any chance did my 𝐊𝐢𝐳 happen to shove his up your who? No, that would be crossing a huge boundary, Marilyn said, obviously finding my question amusing. Boundary? Oh my God, are they all siblings? That would explain a lot as to why they all live together. Yeah, he's my alpha. 𝐴𝐺𝐻𝐼 shouldn't really screw around with the alpha, he said as she chuckled. My lips formed an O shape. Wait, I thought high-ranking werewolves didn't have female children. I wondered out loud. She looked at me with a cocked eyebrow. That's a bit hypocritical considering you are too. Marilyn reminded me. So you're the 𝐿𝐤 of the other werewolves in your... I said, not sure of what word to use. I nodded. Yeah, but it's a bit different from the pack wolf 𝐿𝐤. I thought you guys were pack wolves. She let out a laugh that seemed so evil. It made me want to cower away a bit. Not exactly. Like I told you before. We're shredders. I kind of remembered her saying something about shredders before, but I couldn't remember when or what they were for that matter. What's the difference? Marilyn smiled with sharp, white teeth that made me feel more cold inside than warm. Well, she started saying, but stopped. Shit, she mumbled as she held her hand against my chest, stopping me from walking any farther. What? I asked, looking at Marilyn, then what she looked at. It was a girl. A very beautiful girl with long, rich black hair. She was talking to Kieran and Bolton. She flipped her hair over her shoulder. I could see her cold, icy blue eyes that were surrounded by long dark lashes. My wolf let out a snarl within me as my senses shifted when she moved her perfect hand extremely close to Kieran's shoulder. Kieran was looking at Bolton. He seemed serious and I didn't know what they were talking about. But when she put a hand on his shoulder, I snapped. Arjun, stop. Marilyn tried saying, but her plea was interrupted when my hand wrapped her wrist and twisted her arm. A cracking noise sounded, though the air followed by a hiss. Marilyn jumped back as she held her arm as I began walking toward the girl. I didn't know what my wolf was going to do, but I didn't want to stop it. Even though I barely knew Kieran, I still felt attached to him. At least this way. If I kill her, I can blame it on my wolf. She was taller than me. I could tell that as I made my way closer to her. That didn't stop my body from doing what it did. Just as I lifted my foot, Bolton's blue eyes widened, causing Kieran to turn to look at me. My foot came forward, connecting with the back of her knee. Her legs buckled, and I could feel a surge of heat run through me. I gripped the back of her long, dark hairs. Kieran and Bolton both got up, trying to get to me. If you want to be a little whore, I'll do you a favor and help you get on your knees. I snapped loud enough for anyone in the area to hear me. And just in case you like it rough, I whispered calmly in her ear as I yanked her hair back, causing her body to fall backward. Her body hit the floor, creating a smack, which was followed by a thud from her head. My foot came up, ready to bring it back down on her face, until two arms wrapped around me from behind. The person began pulling me away. I was thrashing around in the person's arms, who I knew were Kieran's by the fireworks that were blowing up throughout my body. Bolton caught my attention as he ran to the girl who I had practically just ripped her head off. Kieran dragged me outside of the mall and onto the sidewalk. He didn't let me go. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Calm down, he shouted, making my wolf even angrier. She let out a snarl, making his grip on my body tighter. Arjun, he said lowly, taking a new tactic to calm me down. If you don't calm down now, you'll regret it. Almost instantly, I felt myself go from a raging fire to just a candle flame. Good, he said, breath 𝐊𝐲 in my ear, making me shiver. Arjun, come back. My vision switched back to usual and my muscles didn't feel as tight as before. Kieran seemed to be holding me 10 times tighter, but I knew that it was just because I had gone from werewolf strength to human strength. I'm okay, I said quietly. Kieran let me go, allowing me to turn around to look at him. Marilyn was running up behind him. She was still holding her arm, which I now felt really bad about. She's fine. Broken leg. But it'll heal. Bolton is speaking to her now, Marilyn said to Kieran more than me. I frowned, knowing that just moments ago I was okay with what I planned to do. But now it felt wrong. It gave me a headache. I should probably explain. Bolton is already on it, Marilyn said, interrupting Kieran. He nodded in response. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I asked, knowing that I was missing something. Tell Bolton we'll be in the car, Kieran said. Marilyn nodded, saying, and of course. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Before taking off back into the mall, holding her wrist. What do you have to explain? I asked again. Kieran ignored me. Once again, he grabbed the shoulder of my shirt and dragged me to the car with him. It wasn't in a harsh way. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Kieran stayed quiet as he continued dragging me to the car. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I snapped, getting annoyed with him. If he wanted an answer and I didn't answer, he would have forced it out of me. I already knew that. He looked down at me with cold eyes that held worry in them. It made me furrow my eyebrows together. Why would he be worried? Your human strength isn't the problem. It's your wolf. She's grown stronger than you naturally, he explained, making me gulp. We need to train you to control yourself because you aren't going to be able to overpower her by just gaining back your usual state. I was lost. Something inside of my head was stronger than my entire self. Wait, what? I asked, practically tripping over my feet as he started walking faster. Your wolf is slowly becoming your dominant side. How she has had more time to develop. She's stronger and she knows how to overpower your human side easier because she's so used to doing it, Kieran explained, his jawline becoming hard as stone as he began thinking about it. We need to train you to dominate her. Your human side has to be the smarter, stronger side of you. I didn't like that word. It made me feel even more like a freak. The word train reminded me of dogs, which reminded me of what I am. Son, big dog. I'm pretty sure everyone in the mall thought I was a bitch now. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Chapter 7. Hot water hug. Lift your leg higher. I'm trying. I grunted out, raising my leg once again. Don't try, Kieran said as he caught my ankle before it hit his arm again. Just do it. He let go of my ankle with a bit of a shove. I glared at him as I tottered on my feet. I contemplated just how I was going to extend my leg high enough to kick his shoulder. It seemed pretty impossible for my non-flexible self. I just had to keep reminding myself that at least it wasn't laps. Every day, Kieran and I and occasional Marilyn and Bolton would come to the backyard of the fairly sized house that the 4 of us lived in and trained me. It was honestly breaking. At times I would love to just lay down on the cold dirt and cry. But I hadn't actually reached that point yet. It wouldn't be as stressful if Kieran wouldn't be so pushy and serious all of the time. All that he ever cares about is making sure I can go one step further than I need to be. When I finally got down jogging a mile, he made me run too. Once I could actually do a push, up without my arms giving out. He made me do 10 of them. In all, I probably did near 70 a day, considering it'd make it to about 6 and fall flat on my stomach. He made me do them all over again until I could do all 10. He never really lets me play around either. He always looks so in the moment. I tried cracking some jokes to lighten up his super mean attitude, but he just decided that my jokes were for 4-year-olds and that mine sounded like a crap ton of fun in that moment. Safe to say, I haven't really tried lightening up Kieran's pessimistic spirits. When Marilyn and Bolton train with us, it's a lot easier. Usually, he is so focused on what Bolton is trying to accomplish that he doesn't worry if the impact of my foot would knock over a small, unstable chair rather than a tree, as he likes to put it. I do feel a bit bad when Kieran ends up just throwing Bolton somewhere. It's a bit strange, though, because I think Bolton may actually like it. I don't mean it in a kinky way, but Bolton seems to enjoy pissing Kieran off. Marilyn, on the other hand, could probably care less. Usually she's the one telling me, boys will be boys, and Bolton peels himself off a tree that he was just thrown against and goes after Kieran again. I truly think she needs some actual girlfriends. I'm only 5'7", I muttered angrily, looking at his large frame that had to be 6 feet at least. I would like to say he was a gentle giant, but he really wasn't. It's not like I'm asking you to jump over my head, he countered, crossing his arms over his buff chest. A scowl formed on his face which I hated. He rarely ever smiled. A smirk was occasional, but scowl seemed to be the winner. Kind of. I mumbled quietly so he wouldn't hear me. I knew I was just whining and that it wasn't even closely related to jumping entirely over his head, but it was still hard. He gave me the usual look of Kieran as Marilyn likes butting it, which consists of, just do what I'm telling you, and a little bit of, are you kidding me or are you just stupid? Deciding on what would be best for my health. I conjured up all of my strength before raising my leg in a poor attempt to kick his shoulder. It didn't work out that way. He let out a bit of laugh, but it was almost a grunt once my foot landed where it had on his arm. Oh look, he said, staring down at his arm where my foot had just been. You managed to kick me right here. His finger pointing to the now bruising area just above his elbow. Again, I could feel my wolf wanting to push through. Kieran was making her mad like he usually managed and planned to do. He figured that by making me do things harder than I'm used to, it'll make my wolf angry due to her attachment to my own feelings. If I start getting angry or upset, then it would make her mad. He wanted me to learn to control her when she tries taking control and slaughtering half of the human population. I felt my vision flicker from the detailed vision of my wolf to the dull vision of my human side, until it all went blurry. I quickly closed my eyes, feeling the oncoming headache as my wolf tried pushing through until the headache went away. I opened my eyes, not expecting what I had. It was actually my own vision for once. Usually, I would never actually be able to do that. I'm pretty sure Kieran wasn't even, it by the way he held his hand up a bit, ready to grab me in case I bolted for him or even town like I did the second day of training. My wolf honestly believed that the girl that she managed to practically make bald would still be at the mall. I did it, I said in awe as I lifted up my hands. I just stared at the palms of them, liking how dull and not super detailed they looked in my vision. I actually managed to. I began before I was interrupted by my own grunt of pain as my headache returned. Only this time, it was much worse. My hands immediately flew to the sides of my head as I squeezed my eyes shut. I had a feeling that now my wolf wasn't just mad at Kieran. Almost as if on cue, a snarl ripped through my head, making me clench my teeth together. Kieran wrapped his arms around me. He was trying to tell me something, but their words wouldn't come through. I was too wrapped up in the mental fire setting ablaze to everything in my head to listen. I tried not giving in to her. I really did. I tried thinking of how awful it could end up being if she got control. Instantly, another snarl ripped through my head, making me flinch back and squeeze my eyes shut even tighter. That's when I felt it. The familiar haze that seemed to wash over me frequently. No, I growled out with clenched teeth as I could feel the pressure in my mind fade and my senses sharpen. I could hear the words Kieran was yelling at me now, and I could smell his scent directly next to me. I could hear his heartbeat along with Marilyn calling for Bolton in the house. My hands fell from the sides of my face as the fire in my head turned to me a candlelight. I knew as well as Kieran knew that she was in control. Kieran wrapped his arms around me tightly as I began turning to bolt for what I'm guessing was the house. He restricted my movement as he held me against him. Don't let her win. I knew the words were coming from Kieran, but they were a bit muffled. She was trying to block me out. I was panicking more and more by the second. If she blocked me out, then I would have no chance of getting control back until she wanted to give it back. And right now she just wanted whoever that girl was dead. Arden, come on. Kieran growled out what I imagine was dreamily loud, but it was just a whisper. My head snapped to the right, seeing Bolton and Marilyn run out of the house with worried expressions. A growl ripped through my mouth as I started pulling away from Kieran. He was too strong. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐻𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I mentally thanked Kieran for being the ape on steroids that Bolton makes fun of him for. Do you want to die? I snapped mentally to my wolf. I didn't expect her to hear me, but I felt a jaw tug at the sound of my voice. She had never done that before. Give me control back. I could tell that holding me back was beginning to become a struggle. She hadn't really stopped jumping and pulling, or even growling at him. I knew that if I didn't get control back now, that she'd free herself and cause more damage than necessary. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐻𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Since she is mad that we have been holding her back, I used all of my strength to focus on my own body. I tried pushing past her to get into my own brain. She was honestly like a virus. Times like this, I hated her. I focused everything I had in me on trying to at least wiggle my fingers. But with the amount of movement my wolf was using now, I'd never actually know if I moved my hands or she did. Stop. You're going to get us killed, I urged mentally. To my surprise, she actually almost stopped, besides the fact that she was still tugging her arms a bit. As my wolf said out loud, I could just imagine what Kieran was thinking. It made sense. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐻𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Even if my wolf loved angering me and taking advantage of me, she always only wanted what was best for me. She wanted me to be happy and okay. She never wanted me in danger. But I guess since she's an animal, it's only instinct to want to kill what wants to hurt you. Yes, us. I repeated, praying to God what I was doing would actually work. My wolf didn't say anything. She only nodded before something extraordinary happened. I slowly gained control back as my vision, because the same muggy, dull sight and my sense of smell was as useless as ever. I actually did it. I squealed, causing Kieran to jump in surprise. And you didn't even have to tackle me this time. Kieran loosened his grip on my body, allowing me to turn around and look at him. He watched me in bewilderment as I smiled bigger than I had my entire time here. It seemed silly, but this was like finding out you were like God or something. I felt like I could do a cartwheel and not die. How did you? Kieran began saying, but dropped it. Come on. Marilyn planned on ordering pizza for dinner and I'd rather not miss it. I rolled my eyes at him. Classic Kieran. Avoids any type of happy moment. I swear he only lives to hear people cry. I didn't ask about his sudden activity change. I knew part of his 𝐾𝐞𝐬𝐧's issue was because he wasn't sleeping well. I figured it was because I was still sleeping in his bed. But Marilyn explained to me that the fact he isn't sleeping in the same bed as me makes him a bit restless. It makes sense. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐻𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My wolf hums loudly all night until I see Kieran the next morning. But I've lived with her annoying habits my entire life. I just learned to ignore it. Marilyn ordered pizza, which was pretty odd considering she loved cooking the most fancy-looking things for dinner. She said her mother believed dinner was the time for family to sit down and be happy together. Kieran just snorted and said, yeah, when your parents aren't assholes. I wanted to ask about it, but considering he looked more angry about it than he did on a usual day, I decided not to. I finished before everyone else. As usual, I still didn't eat as much as Kieran would like me to, but I've been eating more than I ever have before, so he's cutting me a bit of slack. I decided to take a hot shower before Marilyn had the chance to hug all of the hot water. It isn't a secret that she only spends 25 of her time in the shower actually showering. It was absolutely amazing until the water started getting cold, and I knew Marilyn had gotten into the shower down the hall. I groaned, getting out of the shower as much as I really didn't want to. As I stepped out, I realized just how long I was actually in there. It was already dark outside. I chuckled nervously to myself, knowing that I'd be hearing about using the hot water from Marilyn. "No, I'm fine." I was startled by the husky voice that I was just able to pick up. "You look dead. Go sleep in your bed." "Dude," Bolton said from downstairs. "I don't want her feeling uncomfortable. I can sleep on the couch." Kieran answered, sounding tired. "Running those 2 miles with me today must have really worn him out. She's your mate. She won't mind. If you haven't forgotten." Kieran began sounding irritated. "She's only actually known she's a werewolf for maybe 2 weeks now. She doesn't even know what a shredder is, let alone where she came from. Hell, she's practically what she is." I gulped, hearing the stress in his tone. I felt really bad knowing that I was the one who made him so stressed out. "That is pretty bad. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐻𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐻𝐸𝐻. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Growing up thinking you're some psycho must have been some shit childhood." I looked down at my wet feet with a frown. They don't even know the half of it. I couldn't listen to any more of what they were saying. It would bring back memories that I didn't want to remember. I walked to Kieran's closet that he and I now shared with some of my clothes inside. I didn't bother grabbing one of my T-shirts and just grabbed his. He wouldn't mind, right? I mean, he didn't seem to mind when I kissed him. Or beat up that girl in the middle of the mall food court. That was bad. I put on my underwear and bra before putting the shirt on and decided it would be best to wear a pair of shorts for what I planned to do. I waited until I heard Bolton's bedroom door shut. I was far too embarrassed to ask Kieran to sleep in the same room, let alone bed with me, while Bolton was in our presence. Once I knew the door was closed, I walked downstairs knowing Kieran would be on the couch. As I predicted, Kieran was lying in an extremely odd pose on the couch. His eyebrows were furrowed together, and I assumed it was because he was uncomfortable. I felt really bad. I walked toward him, not really feeling like screaming. "Hey, 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐻𝸸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Let's go have a sleep over." Would be a good idea. Once I was in front of him, I reached my hand out to nudge him, but I screamed fairly loudly when his hand shot out to grab mine. His green eyes opened and pierced into mine. I'm pretty sure if I were someone else, I'd be dead. "Auden?" he asked in surprise. "I wondered if you wanted to sleep in your own bed tonight, with, me." I eventually got out. He looked confused at first before one of the most amazing smiles graced his usually stoic face. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐻𝸸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, he said before standing up. He looked down at me before his eyes landed on something. "Is that my shirt?" My eyes grew about 4 times the size they usually were, and I could feel a blush spread across my face. It was in the closet, and I stuttered, not knowing what to say. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐻𝸸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He chuckled before leaning closer to my face. "I actually think it looks great on you." I gulped, not knowing whether to say thanks or just laugh really loudly and be like, "Yeah, it looks even better on you." 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐻𝸸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. We made our way upstairs and didn't really say anything to each other. He did touch me or anything when we laid down, which I was happy about. I felt like if he did hold me or something, I'd probably have a connection. The little sparks are very distracting, and so is he. It's very annoying. 𝐿𝐷𝐼𝐸𝐻𝸸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I did learn one thing. 𝐿𝐷𝼐𝐸𝐻𝸸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He likes the left side of the bed. Chapter 8, Do Rowing in Grey. I couldn't help but admire every little thing about this man. He was truly beautiful. Kieran's usually menacing aura and masculine features didn't seem as prominent as he slept. His sharp jawline and piercing green eyes along with his broad masculine shoulders were usually the first thing that I noticed. But as he dozed away, not so much. I noticed his dark lashes that dusted his cheekbones as his eyes remained closed. The morning sun just barely peeked in through the window, making his tan skin seem a bit darker. His full lips that seemed to be just a bit more plump made me want to kiss him again even more than usual. I didn't feel odd observing him like this. He was asleep, so he wouldn't know. He'd probably be quite flattered that I was practically visually raping his face. Okay, maybe not raping. We weren't even close to getting it on. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐊𝐿𝐿𝐬, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I think Kieran felt my uneasiness on the whole subject of us sleeping together, so he stayed on his own side. He didn't hold me or snuggle me. He didn't kiss me goodnight or spoon me as I slept. He just stayed on his side of the bed with his hand on either my shoulder or wrist. I highly respected him for that. Considering the closest I had even been to bumping uglies with a boy is the freaking doctor giving me a breast exam. I don't even think he was impressed by my cup boobs. Not really being able to control my movements. I lifted my hand wanting to caress his beautifully strong jawline until his hand flew up catching mine. His eyes immediately snapped open, causing an immediate sense of 𝐷𝐴 to wash over me from last night. I should have learned it by now not to touch him while he sleeps. I jumped with a loud squeal, leaving my lips. Kieran quickly released my hand as he realized my hand isn't someone coming to kill him. Sorry, he muttered as he rubbed his sleep-filled eyes. It was only a matter of seconds before he laid his head back down on the pillow and closed his eyes. Again. Are you going back to bed? I asked, causing a strange mumble thing to come out as a response from Kieran. I took it as a no. Then what are you doing? I said, looking down at him. He looked so innocent and not deadly for once. Reminiscing in the moment, he mumbled after a moment of silence. I made an "oh" with my lips before laying my head back down on my pillow. I didn't close my eyes. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐊𝐿𝐿𝐬, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I just continued to watch him like I had been all morning. His eyes open, narrowed on me in a questioning way. What are you doing? Kieran asked. I smiled and answered, I'm reminiscing. So he chuckled briefly before closing his eyes again. Still reminiscing. No, I was never reminiscing in the first place. I was just hoping you'd let me fall back asleep. He mumbled, but I can see that won't be happening. I felt kind of bad, but I wasn't tired and usually I'm the last one up in the house. So I don't have to worry about waking up before anyone else. Well, I mean you can, I started to say before I was interrupted. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐊𝐿𝐿𝐬, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Marilyn's voice rang out as there was a series of knocks on the Kieran's bedroom door. Bolton needs your help at the border. Kieran let out a groan and ran a hand down his face. Hold me out. He groaned. He slowly made his way out of the bed, making his way to the closet. He looked away as he switched his basketball shorts for a pair of jeans and covered his bare torso with a plain black shirt. In that moment, I kind of regretted not staring at his gaudy body more this morning. I turned back to look at him when I was sure he was dressed. As much as I wanted to see him nearly nude, something in me didn't feel comfortable with seeing a man who kidnapped me that way as attracted as I may be to him. I'll be back, but for now I want you to stay with Marilyn, he said seriously as he sat on the edge of the bed, putting his socks on. Once he finished, he walked back over to the closet and grabbed a pair of tan work boots. Is something wrong? I asked, noticing his sudden change of attitude. Most likely, he said simply as he laced his boots. Kieran didn't anything after that. He stood up and walked over to the stand beside his bed. He picked up the pistol, causing my heartbeat to immediately race. He quickly glanced over to me. His eyes scanned up and down my body as if looking for something. Calm down. I'm not going to shoot you. Kieran looked back down at the gun. This is for your protection. You know how to use it. I shook my head. No, he sighed and walked over to me. Kieran looked even taller than usual as I sat on the bed below him. This is loaded. It has 6 rounds, that means you have 6 chances to kill your target. We don't wound people around here. They come near us. They don't get a chance to live, he said with all seriously. I gulped, knowing he was being entirely truthful. Marilyn was going to kill me that night. You pull this. The hammer. The bullet will go into the barrel and squeezing the trigger will launch out the bullet. This gun is never and will never be on safety. Got it? I gulped, his intense stare becoming anxious. It was obvious he really needed to go. Why can't it be on safety? It's a yes or no question. Kieran snapped back. I looked down at the bed and nodded. Keeping it on safety wastes time. Switching it off gives them a chance to run. And we're not sprinters. We don't like to chase. He practically spat out the 2 words though. Okay, I answered softly as I took the gun from his hands. I held the cold metal contraption in my own. It sent a chill through me and I immediately got a bad vibe from it. I looked up to Kieran, whose eyes were trained on me. He looked like he were thinking about something. He took a step forward, almost as if he were going to come closer and grab me into a hug. But he took back his actions and took a few steps back. He glanced down at the metallic death machine in my hand for a moment. I'm only doing this to protect you and the rest of the pack, Kieran said softly, and then he left. I didn't leave the room for quite some time. I wasn't sure if I trusted myself around Marilyn with a gun. I wasn't even sure if I trusted myself to be around anyone, including me, holding this gun. At any moment, I could snap and just start shooting people. 6 rounds may not seem like a lot, but that's 6 lives. Odin, Marilyn shouted from the other side of Kieran's door. Her knuckles bounced off of the wood as she did so. Come in, I shouted from my place on the bed. Worry was laced in my voice as I looked at the pistol once more. I'm not a kidder. As soon as I stood up off of the bed, Marilyn barged into Kieran's room. I said I was coming. I said, but came out a bit more annoyed than planned. She narrowed her eyes on me. Oh dear BFF of mine. I do not care, she retorted. The words almost felt toxic to my ears. Her eyebrows raised when she noticed the gun in my hand. Why do you have that? I looked down at the gun and turned my hand to see the metal glint from sun in the window. Kieran gave it to me. She said as she quirked an eyebrow. Then what? I asked, noticing how she seemed genuinely surprised by the pistol being in my possession. Nothing. Let's go, she ushered as she turned around and walked out the door. Her long, blonde hair bounced against her back as she made her way down the hallway with me trailing behind her. If only I looked like that. I couldn't help but envy her. She was one of the most gorgeous people I'd ever seen. She curves in all of the places I didn't, which led me to wonder why wouldn't have she gotten together with Kieran or even Bolton. All 3 of them look like they just stepped out of a freaking magazine. And then there's me, the girl who doesn't even know her real name, let alone what she's been for an estimated 17 years. Do girls my age usually feel this way, or is it just me? Marilyn and I made our way to the living room. She plopped herself down on the couch. I sat down on the rocking chair next to her. Her legs were crossed as her eyes were trained on me. She looked like she was studying me. Do you need something? I asked, feeling a bit uncomfortable. I still had the pistol gripped tightly in my hand. No, she said, shaking her head. But I am curious. I raised an eyebrow. There isn't much to be curious about, I said, running my thumb against the cold exterior of the gun. Are you joking? Look at you, Marilyn said, pointing to me. You're the daughter of 2 werewolf parents who was taken and then sent away to an orphanage, then had to live the rest of her days in a mad house. Now you're here. How is that not intriguing? My lips formed a flat line. Well, when you say it like that. I drug out as I thought for a moment. What do you want to know? I asked, a bit on edge. Did you always think you were crazy? She said as she'd been waiting to ask the question her entire life. Yes, I said simply. I didn't feel the need to explain why. I'm sure she could tell by the dead look in my eye that I wasn't lying. Have you ever killed anyone? I was instantly taken back by her question. No. Never, I said immediately without a second thought. But you. A smile came to her lips. It wasn't a sweet smile. It was terrifying. It was evil. I've killed more than you can count, she said with all seriousness and not a hint of regret. My jaw dropped and my heart rate quickened. Why? I tried making my voice come out calm, but that wasn't even close to the fervence that it came out to be. Marilyn stopped for a moment and thought. Her perfectly manicured finger came up to her red lips and tapped on it. It's how we live. We prefer to be the hunters instead of the hunted, she stated as he looked at me dead in the eye. Why would you feel that way? I asked, knowing she wasn't just talking about herself. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, and Bolton, because if we don't defend ourselves, we'll all be dead. We protect our own. That's all. The room instantly seemed 10 times quieter. I'm sure you could hear a pin drop. I think I'm going to take a nap, I mumbled, turning in the chair away from Marilyn. You do that? Marilyn said before allowing me to close my eyes. I clicked the safety of the gun and dozed off with the pistol still in my hand. It was dark. I couldn't see anything. Well, that was before a light was switched on. She's asleep, the woman said at the door. But obviously I wasn't asleep. I could see her. My eyes were open. She had brown hair that went just below her shoulders, and what I could tell was blue eyes. I could only see one eye. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The other half of her face was covered by a black shadow. Are you positive? A man said from what seemed to be quite a distance away. Yes, I'm positive. She's right in front of me, the woman said, getting a bit closer. But the shadow never faded. Just make sure she's okay. The last thing I need is her being taken by some assholes, the man said again. She's just a baby. They wouldn't take her from us, the woman said, but she sounded different this time. She sounded older. She sounded like a different person. I lifted my hands up and looked up at them. I was obviously not a baby. I was my 17-year-old self. This woman must be blind. I'm not your baby, I said loud enough for her to hear me. She didn't. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The woman just looked at me. I'm not your baby, I said a bit louder. But the woman still did not hear me. I'm not your baby. Again, she did nothing, as if my screams had just vanished into thin air. They're coming, the man shouted, but it sounded like 2 men at once. The woman gulped nervously. Coming, the woman said, sounding just like the man, except it was 2 women talking. I leaned up and tried to reach for the woman, but she moved away, causing me to fall to the floor. The woman vanished from the room with what sounded like the slam of a door. I slowly stood up from the door and looked around the room. I turned around the secret. I slowly glanced inside of it to see a baby. A baby laying in the same crib, which was a bed that I was in just seconds ago. Suddenly, its eyes opened and I saw one thing. Grey. I was drowning in grey. The colors of the room slowly turned to grey. I turned away from the crib and ran to the walls as lamps. Teddy bears. Pictures all turned grey. What's going on? I said before I came face to face with myself in a mirror. I'm grey, I said out loud as I was the same color as the rest of the room and the baby's eyes. I made my way back over to the baby. I looked in the crib and my heart sank. It wasn't grey. It wasn't even in the crib. My eyes snapped open as my body jolted forward. The pistol clattered to the floor and I could do nothing but sit there alone. Marilyn was no longer in the room. I looked down at my hands the same way I had in my dream. I let out a sigh. I'm not grey, I chuckled to myself when 𝐻𝐢𝐳𝐷 hit me. I jumped up and ran to the bathroom. I looked in the mirror, concentrating on the one thing from my dream that I had recognized almost more than my own reflection in the mirror. Grey, I mumbled to myself. The eyes from my dream, they were my eyes. Chapter 9, Will you just die already? Not edited. It was a crazy thought. It was the most insane thing my brain had ever conjured up. And my brain has conjured up a lot. But this by far takes the cake. I searched the house for nearly 20 minutes just yelling for Marilyn. I went to every room and even checked every cupboard and or closet. She was nowhere in sight. I was about to make the choice to go outside when Marilyn barged in through the front door. She seemed a bit panicked. Her eyes scanned me up and down as if making sure I was okay. "Why the hell are you screaming?" she snapped at me. "I didn't know where you went. Is that blood?" I said, noticing a dark splotch on her grey t-shirt. She looked down at the shirt, inspecting the stain before answering with certainty yes. I gulped, staring at the stain. "Don't worry. It's not my blood," she said as if it were nothing. "Who's 𝐊𝐳𝐳?" I said, automatically thinking the absolute worst thing. I didn't want to think it was Kieran's, but I couldn't help but fear for him. "Not sure. A group of 5 pack wolves charged at Bolton this morning. That's why Kieran had to go. Usually Bolton would be able to handle 5 pack wolves easily, but these 5 were a bit stronger than just normal wolves. He wasn't exactly at the top of his game. 𝐊𝐳𝐳. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐊𝐳𝐳. Pretty sure he used the first half of his shift to hit up some bar and find some poor girl just a little too tipsy, if you know what I mean," she said, still looking at the stain on her shirt. It looked like it really bothered her. After he called Kieran, another group of 5 rushed in from the back. That's only happened like one other time to our parents, never to us. They usually come in all at once, do the whole power in numbers tactic. So Kieran called saying, "They're coming," while you were asleep, but instantly I froze. I wasn't looking at how her manicured nails scratched at the barely dried blood. Now I was looking at her lips as they continued to move as she talked. "Wait," I said, causing her to narrow her eyes at me. I was speaking. "Was he asking if you were sure I was sleeping?" I asked, realized something. Marilyn said, seeming more confused than ever. "Were you eavesdropping?" she accused, getting louder with every word. "No, I think I heard your conversation in my dream." I mumbled, but I knew she heard it. Her eyes focused on me as the most dumbfounded expression crossed her face. "You are freaking psychotic," she said, running a bloodied hand through her blonde locks. Marilyn quickly jerked her hand away from her hair and looked at it in disgust. "Perfectly good waste of a manicure," she muttered, turning around to head back out the door. I hurriedly reached out to grab her arm. My attempt resulted in failure. Her body spun around, swiftly catching my hands in a tight hold. Her eyes flashed to darkness and then back to their original brown color, along with a vicious snarl that left her red lips. I wasn't positive if the red on her lips was because of a lipstick or blood. I assumed a little bit of both. "Listen, this is serious. There was this woman. I think I saw I tried to get out, but was silenced by a sharp pain in my right shoulder. Immediately, Marilyn, who was in front of me, gasped, cursed, and then collapsed to the floor. I spun around just in time to see another bullet being fired at me. I dodged it by running directly into the kitchen. Another shot sounded through the house as 𝐊𝐿 flew right in front of me. My heart was pounding and my shoulder was bleeding profusely. I clenched my teeth together and looked at the wound on my shoulder quickly. I knew in that moment that the bullet must have went through my shoulder and hit Marilyn in the chest. I just hoped it wasn't in the heart. My thoughts were interrupted when another bullet was shot through the wall of the kitchen, followed by footsteps. There was only one way out of the kitchen besides the window, and that's the way I had come in. I internally cursed, knowing that if I had the stupid pistol this could all be over. But no. I left it on the chair when I woke up and searched for Marilyn. "Come on, little bitch." A woman's voice rang out and I knew it was the girl who was firing the gun. Seconds later, she appeared coming into the kitchen. She didn't even stop before she fired another round. I squealed and did a quick shuffle right and grabbed the first thing on the counter, which happened to be a jar with pencils and pens in it. I threw it as hard as I could at her. I was proud of my throw when it managed to hit her hand and knock the gun out of it. I rushed over to the sink and picked up a dirty pan. As I turned, a fist came in contact with my left cheek, causing me to fall against the sink. I brought my left leg up, hitting her in the lower part of the stomach, and then used my right arm to swing the pan around and hit her in the head. The girl fell backward but was definitely not knocked out. I let out a hiss and dropped the pan as my right arm screamed in pain from the gunshot. I rushed out of the room, knowing that she was following. I didn't have time to get the gun. I charged into the room adjacent to the kitchen, which happened to be the office or meeting room that I had first met Bolton in. I slammed the door shut and knew it wouldn't be smart to stand in front of it, considering the chick chasing me like shooting through things. I locked the door and jumped behind a desk that seemed to hide me slightly. I looked down at my right shoulder. Tears didn't even have time to make their way to my eyes. The pain was so much that I felt as if I could collapse that in the blood loss. At the same time that I examined my shoulder, a bullet fired through the door. Oh my God. I mumbled in a panic as I looked up to the door and then back to my shoulder. My entire right sleeve was soaked in a crimson. I could smell the blood and taste it due to the nasty punch to my cheek. A kick was landed to the door, but it didn't bust open. I gulped, knowing it wouldn't stand much longer, as another kick was heard. I hurriedly opened any open drawer in the desk. Only 2 of the 6 were open. Another kick was landed to the door, knocking out the bottom half of the wood. I could hear the woman laugh as she stepped through the hole in the door. I gulped and picked up the biggest thing in the drawer, which happened to be a flashlight. Being as quiet as possible, I listened as her footsteps made their way around the room. Then, they made their way toward me. I gripped the flashlight tightly, knowing I couldn't just hide behind the desk forever. My hands felt cold as they trembled and my shoulder burned like a fire. I jumped up just as her foot was just to the left of the desk where I could see and swung. Instantly, I felt my confidence dwindle as she caught the flashlight and ripped it from my grip. Oh my God. I screamed and ducked as she swung the flashlight around in an attempt to hit me in the head. She released the light, which sent it flying into the wall. My jaw dropped when the flashlight went straight through it. My eyes landed on her thumb as she began to pull back the hammer of the pistol. Instantly, I stood back up and brought my right leg up to kick her in what was supposed to be the head. I missed. I went completely over her head. Way to go, Kieran. I knew I'd never need to be able to kick a 6th person ever in my life. Oh my. I groaned as I brought my elbow back and hit her in the stomach, almost as if it were instinct. Her fingers squeezed the trigger as she doubled forward. The bullet hit the floor just inches away from my foot. I grabbed a lamp from off of the desk and smashed it on her head. She thudded to the floor, and, with shaky legs, she immediately tried getting back up. I was already running. I ducked under the broken door and ran down the hall to living room. I knew where the Kieran's pistol was. Another round was fired. I could feel the wind from the bullet as it just grazed past my left ear. It startled me, causing my feet to tangle and my body to fall to the floor. I turned around to see the woman just beginning to come through the broken door. I hurriedly pushed myself off of the floor, a bullet hole taking my place on the floor just as I stood up. How many rounds are in that gun? I muttered to myself as I entered the living room. I jumped behind the couch. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the wood flooring chip off from a bullet that had been fired at me. I heard the click of the hammer, and then another click as I waited for another bullet. It never came. I perked up, knowing she had most likely run out of ammo. I crawled to the far side of the couch, as far away from the woman. I snatched the lamp from the side table. Then I fell backward just as a hard object made contact with my head. I looked beside me, seeing a gun. "You threw your gun at me," I shouted as I rubbed my head in pain. The woman ignored me with a shrug and ran forward. "Please," I shouted as I threw the lamp. Unfortunately, the lamp just managed to hit her lower jaw. It didn't do much. Just die already. Reaching for the gun beside me, I brought my arm back as far as the pain would allow me and hit just above her right eye. She stumbled backward into the couch, allowing me to run across the room to the chair. I just noticed the glint of metal sticking out from the lining of the chair. I picked it up, cocked the hammer back, and pulled the trigger, but nothing happened. "What?" I mumbled, squeezing the trigger. In the meantime, the lady was already getting up to come after me. "No, no, no," I shouted as I squeezed the trigger again and again. Nothing. Then I heard it. A gunshot. But it wasn't from my gun. The sound rang in my ears. It was loud and it made my head burn. My body froze and my hands went cold. It was Kieran, standing in the hallway. It was Kieran with a rifle in his arms. And now lying on the floor with a bullet hole to the face was the woman. Kieran didn't look fazed by the killing of this woman, as I was about to burst into tears. My heart was pounding and my palms were sweating at the same time that they were freezing. Kieran made his way over to me, taking his time with each step as if he had all the time in the world. He stood in front of me, but didn't look into my eyes as I searched for his. He looked down at my hands. His large hands enveloped my small ones for just a second before taking away the pistol. "This is why you never put it on safety," he said calmly as he clicked it over the fire. "I'm sorry," I stuttered out quietly as I reached out for the pistol. He pulled the pistol away from me. With dark eyes that seemed dull and tired, he focused his attention on me. "Go take a shower. This will heal." Kieran spoke deeply. He placed a kiss to my shoulder and then walked out the door. I stood there in silence for a moment, just thinking about how he had acted. Did he realize I was shot? That I could be dying? I took in a deep breath and closed my eyes as I looked down at the woman on the floor, who couldn't be much older than me, her red hair matching the blood surrounding her. "My mother," I said, finishing the sentence I had tried telling Marilyn earlier. I think the woman in my dream was my mother. Chapter 10. I can't love an old man. I couldn't remove my gaze from the mirror. I didn't understand how, but I knew for a fact that where I had been running my fingers across my shoulder, there used to be a large bullet wound. All that was left was the tiniest scar that couldn't have been much larger than the tip of my pinky. A sharp knock on the door startled me. I jumped, quickly pulling my shirt collar back to its correct place. I ran a hand through my wet hair from the shower I had just taken and stepped toward the door. I attached my hand to the knob, just starting to turn it, when the door was pushed open. "Oops," I said, stumbling backward as the door swung toward me. In the doorway, taking place of the door, stood Kieran, looking godly as ever. I could tell immediately that he was a bit more nervous than earlier, which confused me. His shoulders were tense along with his structured jawline. He watched my every move like a hawk, though there wasn't really anything to watch. I just stood there with wide eyes watching him. He was biting the inside of his cheek, that was obvious. His gaze was mainly focused on my shoulder, but also searching the rest of my body for what I'm guessing was more wounds. "I'm okay. I hit her more than she hit me," I said, trying to ease the tension of the atmosphere. It didn't really seem to lessen it at all. If anything, it made it worse. "Is Marilyn all right?" Bolting got the bullet out. It was coated with silver, so she went into shock and it knocked her out. Pack wolves use them on other wolves when they want to keep them alive for transport. "She'll wake up soon," he said, still seeming as if he were almost as dead as the redhead. I didn't know how to calm him. Hell, I barely knew him. I know his first name and that's all. I don't know how old he is or his last name. I don't know anything besides the fact that he's some godly wolf thing. Gulping back every ounce of fear I had, I felt like I had to do something. I took a deep breath and walked toward him. I slowly reached for his hand. My first thought as I held his hand in mine was that his hands were freaking huge. I felt so small next to him, and now I felt almost childlike holding his large hand. I gave him a small smile and squeezed his hand in reassurance. "I'm okay, I swear," I said again. His eyes shifted in color a bit. I didn't mention it. "You know, my shoulder kind of hurts. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. Think you could rub it a little?" I asked, thinking maybe if he thought he were helping me somehow, he wouldn't seem so angry. He nodded with a look in his eye that made me glad that he no longer had a gun in his hand. He didn't make an effort to move, so I began patting him toward the bed. I narrowed my gaze on the object that we had been sleeping together in just hours ago. I honestly thought that was going to be the craziest thing that happened today. Guess I was wrong. I sat down on the edge of an made bed with Kieran behind me. Immediately his hands rubbed away at my shoulders. He didn't say a single word, but it was one of the most pleasing feelings I had experienced. "What's your name?" I asked, trying to get some answers to questions that should have been asked days ago. "You know my name," he answered swiftly. "You know what I mean." A moment passed before he spoke up again. "Kieran Mina," he finally said. I thought about it for a moment, a smile slowly forming on my face. "And yours?" he asked, causing my smile to fade. "I don't know, but they call me Arden Aldrich." "Well, the nicer of them," I said, not wanting to bring up being called the lunatic. How old are you? I said, switching the subject from me. Does it matter? He asked, adding a bit more pressure to the back of my shoulder, making a moan threaten to escape. Kind of. I hummed. You claim to be my soulmate. So therefore we'd be together. Right. I asked, making sure I was getting my facts right. And age matters why? He asked again. I couldn't possibly fall in love with some old man. I joked around. A growl emitted from just behind me, and I knew it was from him. I jumped from the sound and turned my head to look at him. His eyes still looked angry, but they were definitely darker than usual. I was just joking. 𝐿𝐤𝐸𝐻𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐻𝐸. I said softly. His eyes softened after a few seconds. I turned back around, and he began to massage my shoulder once again. So you're not going to tell me? I asked again. No response. Can I have a hint? Could you possibly be my father? I joked again, praying he didn't take it wrong again. Thankfully, he didn't this time. Highly doubt that. So are you like 18? I said, making a guess. Nope. Higher or lower? I asked, thinking he wouldn't be much older than me. I was 17. 𝐿𝐤𝐸𝐻𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐻𝐸. Basically an adult. 19. Try again. I huffed, wondering how old he actually was. It sounded like he knew this game was going to go on for a while, if I kept counting by one. So you're in your 20s then? Obviously. Kieran said with a bit of amusement in his tone, making me smile again. 22. I said, hoping he wasn't much older than that. If I had a father, he'd probably be so disappointed. Wow, I just managed to make myself sad. Yep. Well, that's just 5 years older. I mean, it's not that bad. I drug out. It could even be less because they don't actually know when I was born. It's just an estimate. I said, trying to convince myself that the age difference was that bad. You're 17. Yeah. I thought he was going to stop what he was doing and walk away or something, but he just chuckled. Well, that's a year older than I thought. I turned and gave him a weird look, considering most people thought I looked older than I am. It was weird having him think I was younger. What? You take on more masculine features like your height and your adorably broad shoulders, which make you seem older. I knew you wouldn't be as old as you look. I'm not stupid, he said monotonously. Did he just call my shoulders adorable? So technically, he said I'm adorable. Right. Okay, I said, slowly, thinking for a moment. Did you just say I resemble a man? I asked, recalling the masculine features comment. Like I said before, it's because you're the daughter of the alpha or beta, most likely. You have masculine features because you are supposed to be naturally stronger and more intimidating than others, especially your siblings. Kieran explained. Why would I have to be stronger than my siblings if I even have any? I asked, truly curious. Kieran sighed and moved his hands from my right shoulder to my left. Because way back when, alpha children had to fight for the alpha title. Now, the oldest is handed the title because everyone realized it only made sense considering that they were the oldest, thus the strongest. I don't understand your people, I said, baffled by the confusion that I always seemed to have when Kieran started talking about werewolves. Because you didn't grow up with them. I don't understand some things humans do. But shit happens, I guess. I said quietly, looking at the bed. I didn't really know what to say after that because I didn't really understand anyone. I didn't understand people or werewolves. I didn't understand why someone would want to take a baby from their mother or why someone would want to kill a stranger in the park. I barely understood myself. Why isn't Marilyn that then? Marilyn wasn't at all like me. She had the most womanly figure I'd ever seen. She had literally everything I lacked. Her blonde hair that ran down her back past her breasts that people would pay to have down to her, but that was perfectly rounded, followed by long, tan legs. She was perfect in everything I wanted to look like growing up. Even now, we aren't like pack wolves. Disgust just rolling over him in waves at the mention of pack wolves. Why do you hate them so much? I asked, remembering Marilyn thinking I was one when we first met and she wanted to kill me. Pack wolves and rogue wolves don't mix, Kieran stated, confusing me. But you're a shredder. We're practically the same, just not as liked, he said simply. Something about the way he said it, with no problem, didn't sit right with me. I turned around and saw Chris cross in front of him. He watched me in confusion as I took his hands and held them. I don't know why these pack wolves don't like you guys. But I like you, I said reassuringly. Pack wolves may be the ones who would do anything to obliterate us, but they aren't the ones that bother me, he said lifelessly, looking at my hands. Then who does? Kieran huffed, ignoring my question, and pulled me into his broad, muscular chest. His grip was tight but comforting. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at this. I wasn't raised to comfort. I'm not the one who needs comforted. Or the one who seems like you have an issue, I countered. I felt his chest vibrate as he chuckled. Just barely. I furrowed my brows, although he couldn't see it since I was shoved against his chest. He confused me more than anyone. I didn't understand why he wouldn't tell me anything. I didn't understand why he does what he does. He was confusing, and that angered me. Why do you always say that you do what you do to protect us? I mumbled into his chest. He didn't reply for a while. We just sat there wrapped up with each other. His body heat made me feel about 10 times hotter than usual. Why do you ask so many questions? He asked, making me huff in frustration. Why are you avoiding the question? Because, he began, seeming a bit tired of my pushy questions. I'm not my parents. I pulled away from him with questioning eyes. He didn't seem at all bothered by what he had just said. But my mind was buzzing with questions. Your parents? I asked, watching his eyes flicker from hatred to the same stoic green orbs as they normally are. Yeah, he breathed out. I knew right then that pushing the subject would get me absolutely nowhere. We sat in silence, just watching each other, until he pulled me back into his chest with a sorry. His hand rubbed my back up and down, and I couldn't ignore the sparks that shot everywhere his hand moved. Do you think there's a chance that I'll find my parents? My siblings? I asked, wanting him to answer honestly. No, because most likely if you do, he said, holding me tighter into his chest. They'll kill you. I gulped, knowing exactly why he would say that. Because as long as I was with Kieran and his pack, I was a shredder too. That I understood.